Hey everyone! I'm so glad you're joining me today for our next cultural lesson. Today we're going to be studying the fundamental needs of humans. I've noticed lately that I've gotten used to things in my life. For example, I'm pretty used to having my computers and television every day. I'm used to having my refrigerator keep my food cold, and my cars for helping me get around. You know, Come to think of it, I've sort of taken these things that I have for granted. When I want to think about these things, it helps me to imagine that my life is very different. Come with me today and let's imagine that we went on a trip and suddenly our boat crashed. We got in our life raft and paddled as hard as we could and made it to a small island. Once we arrived on the island, we realized that we've lost all our belongings. Our suitcases that were full of food and books, toys and clothes, all floated away. The only things we have left are the clothes that we're wearing. We need to think fast. We need to ask ourselves these questions in order to stay alive. What are we going to eat and drink? Where will we find shelter if there's a storm or when it gets dark out? How are we going to get around this island anyway? How will we clothe ourselves? We need to protect our skin from the hot sun and those mosquitoes at night. What are we going to use to protect ourselves if there are predators on the island? Come to think of it, we may be here for a while. So, how can we find a way to express ourselves? I'm wondering if we should maybe decorate ourselves or our tools or shelters. There's got to be some way that we can keep ourselves busy. No matter who goes on this imaginary trip, we all need these things in order to stay alive. All people and animals around the world have to eat, protect themselves, have shelter, communicate with one another. When studying ancient history like early humans, the Mayans, ancient Egyptians, or even how people live today in different areas of the earth, we can ask ourselves these same questions to better understand how we're all connected through these fundamental human needs. So join me today for this lesson on what humans need and stay tuned for some fun activities afterward. So here you can see I have a chart here for you about all the different needs that humans have. There are two main categories. On the left, there are spiritual needs, and on the right, there are material needs. So for today's lesson, I'm going to be sharing with you all the different categories of needs that humans have. One of the first things I want to talk about is clothing. We need clothing to keep our bodies warm and safe from things like the hot sun and the cold. We get our clothing from animal and plant materials. On the left, you can see some plants I've included. There's linen and cotton and some other natural resources. We use all these things to make our clothing. We also use animal products. So we use fur, we use wool from sheep to make sweaters in the winter. We even use feathers to fluff our pillows and to have nice soft coats. Shelter is another need that humans have. We have to be able to get out of the cold and the heat of the hot sun and when there's a storm coming. So, here are some different examples of shelters that people have created using different materials. So, at the very top on the left, where you see that white home, that is made out of a special kind of stone. It helps keep their home cool because that house is in a very hot climate. There's also a castle, and that was made out of brick. Now, down below, you can see there's a home that's made out of lumber. Lumber is really wood actually, and I'm sure that a lot of you probably have a home that's made out of lumber. And over to the right you can see that there are huge buildings over there, and those are made of steel. Those big skyscrapers are things you would see in the city. Nourishment is something else humans need. We all need food and water. Sometimes we get our food from animals. For example, we get milk from cows, and we also get meat. And this hen over here, we use for eggs and also meat. We can also get nourishment from plants, though. Plants are things that grow from the ground, such as fresh vegetables and fruit and herbs. All of those things are so important to help keep our bodies healthy. And of course, we can't forget water. Everyone needs water to drink each day. Defense. We must defend our home. And we have to be careful too, because if we're still on this island, there may be animals nearby, and we have to be careful of the predators. So, how are we going to defend ourselves? Well, there are all different kinds of materials that people used. Some people use wood, like on this bottom left hand corner, you can see this huge wooden catapult. Those were used in medieval times to knock down castle walls. Also, sometimes people use stone, such as that huge castle up in the corner. If you knew someone was coming to attack you, you'd want to have your home a stable, strong fortress like a castle. And what better material to use than bricks and stone? We also use iron. Iron for things like different kinds of knives and weaponry, such as swords, and also armor. Many soldiers had to use armor to protect their bodies during battles. And we can't forget about gunpowder. As you can see in my example from the toys I found in my home, there is a small little cannon, and those were also used to protect people's homes and property. Transportation. How are we going to get around this island, right? Well, for many years, people have used all different kinds of transportation and invented different things along the way. Now, some people use animals as their transportation. Horses and camels are some examples. But we also use different kinds of vehicles too, like trucks and cars and motorcycles. And what about if we need to make a trip across the water? Well, we're going to need a boat, right? So I've included a little example of a rowboat over here. But there are also cruise ships and all kinds of different ocean liners that you might see. And there's also trains and cars. So these are all different kinds of things that people use to get around. And lastly are our spiritual needs. Now, in many ways, this is probably one of the more important needs. Spiritual needs are things that make your heart happy. That's culture and arts, adornment, which are things that you wear to decorate yourself or things that you have, your religion and your beliefs. If we're stuck on this island for a long time, we might need to create our own new traditions. We also might want to do things like express ourselves through art. So, as you can see here, I've given some examples of some art materials up in the corner. There are also different types of religions that people believe in and practice. Music is a huge part of our spiritual needs. Listening to music can make you feel so good and happy. Down below, you can see this child from the Maasai tribe. She's wearing this beautiful headdress and necklace made of beads. Each color holds a special meaning. The jewelry also represents their culture and traditions. So something as simple as a necklace can have so much meaning behind it. So now it's your turn. Using what you learned from this lesson today, create your own chart or collage of the things that you need to survive and be happy. So, step one, you will need some old magazines, scissors, glue, and some construction paper. With your parents' permission, because you want to make sure they've read those magazines first, cut out the pictures that represent the things you need to live and express yourself. Step two, after you cut out different needs from each category, and you can go back to slide number 6 to see, for example, clothing, shelter, defense, you would glue them together to form a collage like you see here on the right. It does not have to be neat. Collages are meant to be artistic and put together in unique ways. You could also create your own version of the chart that I showed you earlier. And lastly, if you would like something more to do after you've created your collage or chart, you might want to choose an ancient civilization that you're really interested in learning about. Once you decide on one, because there are a lot, you might want to research how that civilization met its needs by using the questions on our slide number 3 as a guide. So, for example, if I want to study ancient Egyptians, I might ask these kinds of questions to myself. What kind of shelter did they make or use? What foods did they eat back then? How did they protect themselves against enemies? There's another way you could do some special research. You could focus on one specific need that you're interested in, such as shelter. You could research all the different shelters that people have created around the world from back in history to today. Wouldn't that be so cool to see all the different types of shelters that people have created? Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you have fun exploring different needs that people have, including your own. And I can't wait to see what you come up with. Bye.